So Nicholas contacted me purely on the basis of me or Swift Carbon supplying the equipment for the event. So we agreed that we would, we would sponsor the bikes immediately because I thought it would be a brilliant, platform for the brand. Me personally getting involved, the idea, it was something that almost like grew inside me. I started sort of fantasizing about riding through Africa. When we realized that this thing was a real challenge and it was going to get super tough, I think was when we crossed over the Egyptian border into the Sudan. All of a sudden, we didn't have a 50-kilometer-an-hour tailwind. We didn't have an armed guard around us. It seemed to just get even hotter than it was in Egypt. The roads seemed to get even tougher. We were trying to average just over 300 kilometers a day, which would bring us to 34 days. But Africa had different ideas for us. We were faced with illness. We were faced with bureaucracy at border posts. We were faced with inaccurate roads and maps. There was actually nothing that was completely accurate along the trip. We rolled off one Tour de France in 11 days just to stay on schedule for that 38 days. Some days we did 180 kilometers because we were doing 12 kilometers an hour along like a dusty sand patch that wasn't even a road. So we really had to fight in the last 2 weeks, I would say, to even come close to the 38 days that we finally managed to get to. If you look at a map of Africa and you see it's all yellow and sandy at the top, and then it goes like slightly green, and then it goes very green, and then it goes, but when you're riding it, I've physically experienced that, from the deserts through into the semi-desert, into the savannah, into the tropics, and then all the way down to Cape Town. It was just an incredible experience to be attached, to the road. I was basically, joined to every single meter of the African continent, and I experienced the change in the people, and I experienced the change in the terrain, the geography, and that's what I really sucked in was that journey of different landscapes and different peoples and emotion. That was quite an incredible experience. As with regards to the mental struggle and how many times I wanted to give up, honestly, I can say I wanted to give up probably more times than I can remember. I wanted to give up and go home from Khartoum because I was sick. Then I wanted, once we got into Ethiopia, I thought, no, I'm definitely catching a plane home from Addis Ababa. Then, the next place was Nairobi, and I kept thinking, I wonder if there's a direct flight from Nairobi to Cape Town, or I wonder if there's a direct flight from Addis Ababa. How can I get? It was a constant struggle. It was never, every single day, I can say honestly was, the hardest thing for me was the sleep deprivation. We probably had sometimes 3-4 hours sleep a night by the time we got in, and we had to set up camp, and then we had a 3 or 4 in the morning call to get out early and get on the road before the wind came up and before the heat of the day. So for me it was a constant battle. It was something that I've never experienced on this kind of level before. I went to places inside that I never thought I could actually reach. Yes, we try to think of everything beforehand and think where we would have problems. And I think really the biggest problems came from the contact points with your bike, your backside, your hands, your feet. I had constant issues with just the pressure from your bum on the saddle, and everybody else did. David Kinger, eventually that's what got to him, was he had the most terrible saddle sores. As far as the bikes went, yes, it was always going to be a challenge to do that route on a road bike. But I can gladly say that all of us, the bikes we started on were the bikes we finished on. We didn't have one crack frame. We didn't have any problems at all with the bikes that we rode. So, you know, that was almost the platform that was the constant throughout, where we were trying to change tires and tire widths for the various conditions. You know, we were trying to put more padding in under our handlebars, and yeah, the saddles were really. That's you know, not necessarily the saddles, but I mean the San Marco saddles were great, but it was just a matter of spending 12 hours a day, every single day, where, you know, with a build-up of pressure that really caused all of us a lot of grief. Then, so I started the race or event at 73 kilos. And by the time I'd finished, I was about 65.5, 66 kilos. So I lost about 7 kilos along the way. You are using in excess of 10,000 calories a day, but not necessarily putting all of that back in your body. You know, we had huge challenges with food along the way, just sourcing fresh food. A lot of the time we couldn't. So we were living on you know, on pre-packed canned foods, you know, recovery shakes, and that's fine for a few days, but, you know, weeks on end, your body definitely goes into a state of dehydration. You start a state of, you know, degradation, as it were. The only reason I was even confident of testing our product, and it was very much in the public eye, because it was independently filmed. The whole event was independently filmed by Sky, for Sky Television. And I promise you now, if we had broken a bike, that definitely would have been filmed, because it was, you know, it would have been of interest to people to actually see a broken bike, you know, in the middle of Africa. But, you know, they didn't break, and it's testament to the work that not only me, but the whole Swift Carbon team has done. You know, it's a young brand, but we're not in a position to be able to put out product that's average. We really needed to put out product that's excellent, and we fight it. We work hard every day, and we fight for that every day. You know, and I'm really happy that it came through. And we, like I said, we finished on the bikes we started. There were no spare bikes used, and the bikes were actually perfect. I mean, we had a few little paint chips here and there, but no discoloration, no cracking in the carbon. And most importantly, they became really comfortable platforms, sometimes on roads that you would even battle on a dual suspension mountain bike on. And I mean, I say that, I mean, there's coverage that will prove that. The roads were insane at some points. The support crew were unbelievable. I mean, these guys were driving behind us. I mean, it must have been an absolute nightmare, driving for 12 hours behind us a day at 30 k's an hour. And then afterwards, having to get out, we had to set up camp, we had to get food. They had to try and give us a massage, help us with washing our clothes. I mean, we were like infants. We were probably like terrible, obnoxious 7-year-old kids, you know, screaming and shouting and carrying on. And, you know, in some instances I'm probably a little bit embarrassed about, you know, some of the, you know, the things I said and some of the things I did, because it just seems ridiculous now. For a long time I've never, you know, Cape Town just seemed too far off. It just seemed like we would never ever get there. And then when we finally swung right along Main Road and we had a little bit of a tailwind, and, you know, there were people behind us, and it was a moment. I almost slowed down a bit just to actually savor every single pedal stroke. And then when we came around the corner to the hotel, and there was, you know, there were people there, family and friends waiting for us there. I think that's when it just, you know, we all got very emotional. It just really, it really struck home. And I think what it did as well is that, you know, when you finally see your family again, because we were sometimes so on the edge, and there was so much at stake sometimes, and we were literally surviving. It kind of almost makes things, you know, it puts everything into perspective. You know, it makes you realize how delicate things are, you know, and just how close we were to to something going wrong or physically being totally exhausted. So there was a lot of emotion when we crossed the line.